Thank you for joining me for tea. Today, we will be reading Fairyopolis. Fairyopolis is a very charming book. It's in the style of a journal, and it is written as if it is a real journal. Or is it a real journal? I'll let you decide. This journal belongs to Cicely Mary Barker. And that's her. And then it says Storrington Photographic Studios. And then there's a letter attached. It says, "Dear Sirs, I hope you will not mind my writing to you with a request. I am an artist and a writer who has been fascinated by fairies since I was a little child. My first book, Flower Fairies of the Spring, will be published later this year. I am sending the Society a journal that I kept during the summer of 1920, when I felt particularly inspired to write and sketch copiously. I am trusting you, my fellow fairy lovers, to look after and preserve this book. Yours sincerely, Cicely M. Barker." April 3rd. How wonderful it is to be back at Barton's. It is a haven of tranquility here, and I am so looking forward to a few months of painting and quiet contemplation. Edith is such a dear friend, and it was very kind of her to offer me the use of her summer home here in Storrington. Oh, I do so hope she is enjoying her trip to India. Edith may travel secure in the knowledge that her garden will be well looked after during my stay. My gardening gloves were the first item to be packed. And then there's this beautiful painting of the summer home. April 6th. Rabbit, squirrel, sparrow, mouse footprints. A strange thing happened today. I was watering the flowers when I caught a glimpse of something on the path. On closer inspection, I could clearly see that it was a set of tiny, wet footprints. Each print was no longer than 1/4 of an inch. One could see the impressions of tiny toes, like tiny children's footprints on a beach. The footprints led along the path for a yard or so, then headed into the daffodils. I studied them closely, but they quickly dried in the spring sunshine and were gone. It is now the evening. I'm thinking over today's incident, and I'm now sure that my eyes were deceiving me. I think I may have been working too hard on my fairy paintings recently. I'm reminded, however, of my grandmother's wonderful fairy tales. She made her fairies seem so real. The Daisy Fairy. Humans try to search for me. I flit, I fly, I hide from thee. Lift my petals, but only 3, to see if you may capture me. It's a postcard. Let's look through these petals. It's a butterfly, a bumblebee. We have another bumblebee. Another bumblebee. A butterfly. A beautiful butterfly. There it is, the daisy fairy. Let's look at this postcard. It says, 25th September. My dear Cicely, I found this beautiful card tucked away in a shop recently, and I thought immediately of you with much love, Grandmother. I have some knowledge of animal footprints, and I'm convinced that these prints were not from any ordinary creature. Attached in here is a field guide to fairies. What is a fairy? A fairy is a tiny being in human form that possesses magical powers. The English word fairy comes from the Old French fairy and the Latin fata, meaning fate. The classical Greek fates were believed to control the destiny of the human race. Fairies are called by different names in different places. Fairy, fae, the little folk, and the good people. Additionally, there is a whole variety of other supernatural beings that are generally classified as fairies. For example, elves, pixies, brownies, and hobgoblins. The main types of fairy. Flower fairies. Beautiful creatures that embody the spirit of the flower, a shrub, or a tree. They are found wherever plants and flowers grow. Elves. Merry creatures who live in colonies under the earth. They love parties, music, and dancing, and are known for making mischief. Pixies. Playful elven creatures. England's West Country is famous for its helpful but mischievous pixies, or piskies as they are known in Cornwall. They occasionally mislead travelers. Goblins. Small, grotesque creatures that like to make trouble for human beings. Hobgoblins, however, have a similar disposition to brownies, being friendly and good-humored and fond of practical jokes. Brownies, helpful little men who sometimes assist with household chores. They have been said to visit farms in Scotland and will get tasks done while the family sleeps. Dwarves are the miners of the mountains. They never appear above ground during the daylight hours because they will turn to stone. Gnomes are little bearded men who guard hidden treasures in the woods and hills where they live. Leprechauns are elven Irish fairies who wear three-cornered hats. Every leprechaun has its hidden pot of gold. Here's a list of interesting library books. There's a list of interesting library books. And there is a note from Storrington Library to the trustees of the Storrington Library. The describer, a resident of West Sussex, have the privilege of borrowing books in accordance with the rules of the library. I shall not write in, mark, or in any way abuse any book that is the property of Storrington Library, and I will pay for all the losses and damages to books taken out on this card. So it's a library card. Applicant must sign plainly, own name in ink. And there's Cicely M. Barker. Here are the library rules. This card entitles the user to borrow up to 4 items. Late returns will incur a daily fine. Please see library notice board for current rates. Books may not be borrowed if fines are owing. There will be silence in the library at all times. I have put together this small book containing salient pieces of information. And then here are some of her illustrations. 11 May. The days have passed quickly. I have been sketching and writing nearly every day. However, by far the most important thing to report is the occurrence of an inexplicable accident. Yesterday, while taking my afternoon rest, I heard the sound of singing, and what a sound it was. Like the tinkling of tiny magical bells. The sound was entrancing, and it appeared to be coming from the end of Edith's garden. I crept down to the garden's end, but as I neared the site, the singing abruptly stopped. There was no one and nothing to be seen, apart from a luxuriant patch of lilies in the valley, which were so pretty, I couldn't resist sketching one of them. The lily of the valley brings tidings of warmer weather and symbolizes the return of happiness. Interesting library books. The Fairies of the British Isles by C.W. Pinbright. Encounters with Fairy Folk and Other Supernatural Creatures by Mary MacDonald. A wild flowering plant, sprigs of fragrant, bell-shaped white flowers open in late spring. The height is 9 inches and its spread is 12. Gentle fairies, hush your singing. Can you hear my white bells ringing, ringing as from far away? Who can tell me what they say? Also in this book is a lovely little map of Sussex. It is divided into 5-mile squares, and there are tiny little pressed flowers inside. Fairy places in Sussex. There is the Cissbury Ring, Chanctonbury Ring, and Ladbury Hill. These Iron Age forts are said to be visited by fairies on Midsummer's Eve. Harrow Hill was said to be a home for fairies. They left the hill when archaeologists arrived, and you can see these places circled out and annotated in her map. Pulborough Mount is said to have the site of a fairy funeral. A site called Burlow Castle near Elphiston is where a local man was said to have helped a fairy in the 19th century. Filtham, the West Sussex, is where the poet and artist William Blake in 1800 witnessed a fairy funeral at the bottom of his garden. 21 May. My library books have given me intriguing insight into the world of fairies. It seems that for centuries people have encountered fairies, pixies, and elves in locations all over the country. What is more, I have come across an entire chapter on Sussex and its supposed population of little folk. I appear to be living in a country that is infamous for its supernatural inhabitants. 23 May. Have come across a very interesting advertisement in the Sussex Herald today. Perhaps I should attend the lecture. If nothing else, the sea air at Brighton would be exhilarating. We'll cycle down to the station and investigate train times. 3:15 train arrives 13:51. The Sussex Herald, the British Fairy Folklore Society, and its members welcome you to a lecture on the subject of the little people and their habits and behavior, given by renowned fairy expert and enthusiast Lady Harrington Smith, to be held at St. Mark's Church Hall, Daisy Line, Brighton, Sussex, on Saturday, 2nd June at 2:30 p.m. Tickets are $9 available on the day. Refreshments will be served. Please note, latecomers will not be admitted. June. Had a wonderful day in Brighton. The lecture was fascinating. I was fortunate to be able to have a short conversation with Lady H.S. She spoke of her ability to see the fairies, her gift as she described it. Apparently she has a small group of flower fairies living near her house. She described them to me. Some fairies wear collars made of petals. They have wings. They are delicate and butterfly-like. Gossamer dress. Boy fairies wear tunics. Cherubic face. Pointed ears. Do all flower fairies have these? According to Lady H.S., there are a significant number of people who are blessed with the gift. I myself have never seen a fairy, but given the experiences I have had, I wonder if I may be similarly gifted. Some fairies go barefoot, others prefer petal-on-leaf shoes. Had to walk along the pier after the lecture. Couldn't resist buying this. Now I'm going to read this last page. There's many more pages in the book, but I can tell that you're getting sleepy after your tea. I'll finish reading this page, and then I will let you go to sleep. 23rd June. Midsummer's Eve is the night of 23rd June, is the most likely time of year to see a fairy. I will be sure to stay awake and keep watch. How to see a fairy. It seems that fairies remain hidden under a concealment of glamour, a magic veil that they cast over themselves. Folklore says that there are only two means by which humans may disperse the glamour. I certainly cannot count on finding such a rare specimen. Melanargia galathea. Even if I could amass the correct ingredients, I daren't apply such a concoction to my eyes. How to disperse glamour through the use of a 4-leaf clover. By means of fairy ointment. Fairy ointment is a salve made by the fairies from 4-leaf clovers. If a human applies this ointment to their eyes, it enables them to see through the glamour and observe the fairies. In legend, there are stories of fairies giving little gifts of fairy ointment to favored mortals. You apply it under the eyelids and upon the eyelids, evening and morning. Oil. Vial glass washed with rose water and marigold water. The flowers be gathered towards the east. Buds of hollyhock. Tops of wild thyme. Buds of young hazel. Gathered near the side of a hill where fairies used to go oft. Grass of a fairy throne. Put all into the oil and the glass, and set it to dissolve 3 days in the sun, and thou keep it for thy use. 24 June, 6 a.m. It was Midsummer's Eve yesterday, so I stayed up all night. I saw nothing. I am most disappointed. I did, however, find something rather intriguing caught on a twig. We'll write more later. And with that, I think you should go to sleep, friend. You seem very tired. We've had a long day. We can read this another time. Thank you for joining me. Good night and sleep well.